Welcome to the Cafe Culture podcast, a season of discussions on culture, politics, philosophy and science.
At a talk recorded on the 20th of October 2014, Richard Stevens discussed swearing as a response to pain.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here to the North East to come and teach you how to swear. It's been it's a great pleasure to have that honour. So I've been researching the psychology of swearing for probably nearly 10 years, and I've given versions of this talk all over the world numerous times, but always with PowerPoints. And the brief was to give the talk without PowerPoints. And so I'm not going to go on about this for too long, but I thought, okay, that's fine. I can just, manage without the PowerPoints. So at first I thought I'll just make some notes and then speak to those. But the notes just ended up being me writing out my PowerPoints. And I thought, well, that's just pointless. So I have got the PowerPoints here on my iPad, and if all else fails, I'll just flip to reading out the PowerPoints mode. But what I'm going to try to do is give this talk free form. So it might be a bit more random than normal. Some of the interesting thing about talking about swearing is, like, it is disgusting and rude and stuff. And what I often do is kind of use visual stuff, so I can have a really bad swear word up on the PowerPoint, like, let's try you out, motherfucker. But saying it's horrible, you're like, oh my God, did he just say that? But normally you just point to it, and it's, nobody really minds. So it's going to be interesting for me to get through this talk, actually. And I have some ice-breaking exercises as well, which tend to be a bit visual. So I'm going to try a different ice-breaking exercise today. So should we start with that? Well, who's in the audience, first of all? Who's a scientist? One. A few scientists. What kind of scientists are you? Physicist. Who's a psychologist? Oh, fantastic. One of my own people. What else have we got? Who else have we got in here, science-wise? A chemist? Medic? Good, excellent. So, yeah.
Not really a scientist, chemical engineer.
A chemical engineer. So, well, I don't know. It sounds like a scientist to me. And who's not a scientist then? What sort of? Yeah. So, are you just like really interested in swearing then? Well, anyway, it's nice to see who's in here. We've got one psychologist and a few other people. Well, I thought maybe to kick us all off and get us into the mood for this, I want you to think about your favourite swear word. Think about your favourite swear word. Okay, you got one? Okay. I want you to think it, just repeat it in your head. Just get some swearing energy in the room. Not much is happening. Maybe we need to be a bit louder. Maybe just murmur it. Just so, very quietly, so nobody else can hear. Just murmur it. Go on. I hear a murmur of a... The power of swearing is so great that, a window might break. We need a bit louder. So maybe just say your favourite swear word. Fuck. Bit louder? Should we just shout our favourite swear words and just get this over with, okay? Great, let's go. Let's count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Fuck! Okay, I'll be quiet this time. That was a bit too loud. Do it again. 1, 2, 3. A bit of a fuck, shit, bollocks, I think. Was that it? Something like that? Anyway. We've done quite a few studies of swearing, and we always get people to nominate their own swear word, because swearing is such a personal thing that I think if you just gave people a swear word to say, it might not be right. And all our participants are Keele students, and fuck, shit, bollocks is basically what they come up with almost completely, with a few notable exceptions. So I'm here to talk about my research on swearing into pain. I'm going to try and tell a few stories about why I did it, some of the psychological background to it, moving into what we actually did and what we found and what we think it means. It's all been done, nobody really no, you don't get much money. There's not much money in swearing research. Although we did get a small grant from the British Psychological Society last summer, which was fantastic. So who knows, with maybe more money will follow that. But it's all really been done with student projects. So this is as much my fantastic Keele University BSc students' work as it is my work. Even the stuff that's published. We've got 3 studies published looking at different aspects of swearing and pain and emotion and pain. I got into the idea of studying swearing and pain. Well, I think everybody has a slight interest and fascination with swearing because of, as you're growing up, swearing seems to be a kind of a conduit into the mysterious world of the adults that as a kid you're excluded from when you have to go to bed and the adults are downstairs doing stuff, Lord knows what. And, sometimes during the day they let slip, a swear word here and there. And you sort of think, this adult thing, there's something to this and I'm excluded from it. I don't know. But everyone's got interest. I mean, I can remember, I'm not exactly sure what age I was, but I was transitioning from one school to another. And I remember a really good friend of mine who's a year older saying, you're not going to believe what it's like in the higher school. There's kids and they say bloody fucking hell in the playground. I was like, wow, really? They say that? So there's this sort of fascination with this swearing is this, what does it lead to, this sort of kind of adult world. But my interest in swearing and pain is much more mundane. It's kind of got 2 strands. One is DIY, and I was building a shed on my wife's allotment. Shed was almost finished. I was up on the roof putting the last few nails in, and somehow I really whacked my little finger with the hammer really hard, really went completely numb, never had such a bad accident before. So I was by myself on the shed roof. How did I respond to that unfortunate incident? I said, fuck. And then I said it again, fuck. And I said it, probably repeated it for about 2 minutes, repeated the word fuck, 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 fuck. And the pain went away. Whether the 2 things were connected or not, I've got absolutely no idea. Well, I didn't have then. But there was nobody around. It wasn't like a social thing. It was just me, a hammer and my finger, and that was how I coped with that pain. Around about the same time, my daughter was born. It's been about 10 years. It was a very long and difficult labour, 20 plus hours. And towards the end of the labour, my wife was in a huge amount. It turns out the baby was breech, but they didn't realise this until kind of the 11th hour or the 23rd hour, and had an emergency section and so on. So all this time, my wife is trying to push this baby out, and its legs are wedged. It's not moving anywhere. So my wife was in a lot of pain. And as things wore on, the contractions came on very hard, and my wife swore with the pain, and the contractions eased again. And despite everything that was going on, she was a little bit embarrassed at having been swearing like this in front of all these doctors and nurses and so on, midwives in the hospital, only for the contractions to come on again and for her to kind of redouble her swearing and shouting and so on. And the interesting thing about that is when she was apologising, the nurses and midwives said, don't apologise, we hear this all the time. It's a completely normal part of giving birth, swearing and cursing and cussing. That was the soundtrack to our first moments on the planet. And that's kind of interesting. And it was with these kind of, this idea of swearing and pain going together was the starting point for the research that we did. I kind of looked into the psychology of swearing a little bit. And in the last 10 years, there now is a psychology of swearing. There is quite a lot written. But 10 years ago, there was not very much out there on the psychology of swearing. So we were a little bit on our own, really, in terms of what we thought was going on. But we'd done our first poster of a swearing and pain experiment, and I was driving to work one day, and Steven Pinker was on the radio promoting his new book, The Stuff of Thought. This is back 2007. Steven Pinker is a very well-known psychologist in America, and he has a whole chapter in the book called The 7 Words You Can't Say on Television. and it's all about the psychology of swearing. And it's named after an American comedian called George Carlin in the 70s had this routine called the 7 words you can't say on TV, which he then proceeded to say on TV and caused a huge amount of consternation and controversy. It went to the Supreme Court. Swearing has a lot of power to annoy and upset people. Anyway, Steven Pinker's analysis of the psychology of swearing is some quite interesting psychobiology. The first is that there is a known language problem impediment called aphasia, and aphasics usually have damage to the left part of the brain, and they have difficulty in speaking. And yet many aphasics, although they can't speak in a kind of regular way, they can't converse or think about ideas and articulate them, they can say stereotypical phrases, including the ability to swear. In one of the most famous aphasic cases called Broca's tan, the patient's called Tan because he could only really say one syllable, tan, tan, tan. That was how he acquired his nickname. He could swear fluently. He could say sacré nom de Dieu, which is like a French swear word. So aphasics can't talk, but they can swear. And then people with Tourette's who have this swearing tic, or at least a percentage of them do, about 60-70% have the swearing tic. There's some evidence that they have damage to the basal ganglia, which are kind of deep-lying brain structures. So that kind of links swearing with these different non-language parts of the brain. Then there's also a case study of a guy who had basal ganglia damage, and he had the reverse of aphasia. He could converse fluently, but he was unable to use stereotypical language like singing and praying, and he was unable to swear. So what this kind of implicates then is that swearing is a special form of language. Swearing doesn't happen in the usual places where language is generated. It happens in these deeper parts of the brain. These deeper parts of the brain are evolutionarily more ancient, and I think that's quite an interesting idea, that swearing is almost tapping into our more primitive kind of mind and more primitive kind of mindset. So when I started, I was getting interested in swearing and pain. I was reading up on the psychology of swearing, and culturally though, I always imagined that swearing and the 4-letter words are quite a recent phenomenon, perhaps in the last 100 years or so, but completely not so. Geoffrey Hughes has written a book, something called A History of Oaths and Curses in the English Language. There's a fantastic table in the book where he gives the first known usage of all the popular 4-letter words. And they're actually, most of them are 1,000 years old. Shit is 1,000 years old. Cunt, which is a horrible word, was originally, when it was first used 1,000 years ago, it appeared in an anatomy textbook, and it was the correct term for the vagina. So that's an interesting about face. Arse is quite an interesting word. Arse came along in about 1200, and around the same time as the word arse came along, the word donkey came along. Can you see why that might be? Because previously a donkey was an ass, and people could talk about asses and refer to asses, and everything was absolutely fine. And then the word arse came along, and suddenly talking about an ass became slightly embarrassing because of the massive double entendre in the room. I was admiring your ass the other day. It got embarrassing. So they quickly had to find another word for an ass, which was not ambiguous, so donkey came along. Okay. So, yeah, so why do people swear? Why do you swear? Frustration?
I mean, maybe with whatever you have to be doing.
What does it?
Thinking.
Does it help you in any way? Is it contribute to the frustration or relieve the frustration or?
Like an emotional, valve.
A valve. That's an interesting word. Yeah. An emotional valve releases tension.
Could it be, say, oh bother, I've hit the finger with my hammer, takes too long?
You could say like drat or something. Be just as quick. Yeah, people swear for all kinds of reasons. I mean, there does seem to be a very strong connection between swearing and emotion. Frustration is one example, anger, fear, but not just negative emotions actually. There's a really nice story that, not this Olympics, but the Olympics before, one of the English windsurfers, she unexpectedly won a bronze medal. They never expected in their wildest dreams this was going to happen. So she's getting out of the water, she's just like, won a bronze medal in the Olympics, unbelievable. And the BBC stick a microphone in front of her. Live TV, you've won a bronze medal, how does it feel? She goes, fucking amazing. As you would. So it's not just negative emotion, it's any, swearing seems to be connected to emotion. Now I've got time, I might go on to that a bit more. So swearing is connected to emotion. So we got interested in why people swear when they're in pain. And as I say, there was not really much written on that 10 years ago when we started with this, so it's kind of a bit of a hobby really. So you'd sort of ask somebody, so you'd ask a psychologist, maybe like yourself. I'll ask you actually, why do you think people swear when they're in pain?
Well, you'd think from what people are saying that it would be some kind of release of just tension as much as anything, but
Okay.
the evidence seems that it's more than that, but I don't know why that would be.
Well, that's kind of the catharsis hypothesis. And that was only, so far as I can tell, only first written when Steven Pinker wrote his book in 2007. The idea that swearing, you hit your finger with a hammer, you have this huge like, and then you swear and it kind of dissipates, like vents, like you said the word valve. So that's the catharsis hypothesis of why people swear. Most of the psychologists I asked or talked about this with said disinhibition. Okay, so there's an idea in psychology that we have this function that because we're social beings and we move around a social world, we can't really act on our first ideas and thoughts because they're quite often inappropriate. So you see a kid walking along with an ice cream, you just go, oh, nice ice cream, thank you very much, because you get into trouble with the kid's dad who's probably massive. And so we're always double thinking and triple thinking, so that's not appropriate, better not do that. You know, and that's called inhibition. It's like a general process that we have. And one idea is that when you hurt yourself, in this kind of, due to the trauma of the pain, you can no longer maintain these inhibition processes. So the inhibition just stops, and you've got all this stuff about to fly out at any moment, and it just all comes flying out, swearing and so on. So that's the disinhibition hypothesis that most psychologists I spoke to said might be why you'd swear in response to pain. I played football with a guy around about that time who was a pain researcher, and I was chatting to him one day about it, and he said he thought it might be catastrophizing. Now, catastrophizing is the sort of the idea that of how much harm you attribute to a painful event. So if you catastrophize a lot, you might get a paper cut and think, oh, I've got a paper cut. Oh, my little fingers, it might get infected. I could lose the finger. I could get gangrene. I could die. That's someone who's a huge catastrophizer. On the other end of the scale, someone who's not a catastrophizer at all would be like a cowboy who's been shot in the chest, and he says it's just a scratch and gets on his horse and off he goes. So there's two extremes, and everybody is somewhere along the stream of being a catastrophizer. But there are catastrophizing behaviours, and when people have catastrophizing behaviours and thoughts, it's an unhelpful response to pain, and it usually makes the pain worse. So this guy said maybe swearing is an example of catastrophizing behaviour. The other hypothesis is like a social psychology hypothesis, and that's the idea that when you're out and about and you hurt yourself, you stub your toe, you momentarily look like an incompetent person. So you need to do something to restore your competence in the eyes of onlookers, and so you could say, oh, ouch, or damn, or a swear word, and people kind of can then read the situation and think, this isn't a crazy person, it's just somebody who's stubbed their toe. So we basically end up with 4 competing hypotheses of why people might swear in response to pain. We were going with the catastrophizing one. We thought swearing would probably make pain worse. Although there was the slight niggling doubt of if swearing makes pain worse, why do people do it? Because when I get pain, I want the pain to stop as soon as possible. I don't want it to carry it on in any way. So that's the kind of backdrop to what we were doing. So the research we actually did at Keele, and so I'm quite interested in science communication. And what I'm really passionate about with science communication is that you make sure the science is in the communication. So when we're talking about science, we talk about the process of science and what was actually done to lead to the findings that led to the interpretation and the conclusion and the science bit. So I'm going to tell you in a bit of detail what we actually did in these studies. Luckily, it's very, very simple to understand. So basically, I mean, it was incredibly simple. We had to come up with a way of giving people a painful stimulus in the laboratory that wasn't harmful, because the last thing you want to do is harm people. It's okay to give them pain as long as you don't harm them. What we came up with has turned out to be a forerunner of this amazing phenomenon, the ice bucket water challenge. But we didn't tip a bucket of water over people's heads. We just said, here's a bucket of water, put your hand in the water and see how long you can keep it in there. And that's our kind of measure of pain tolerance, how long you keep your hand in ice cold water for. Anyone ever done the ice bucket challenge or stuck their hand in ice cold water? Go on, someone must have done it. I hadn't done it for a long time, and then I was given a science talk in Manchester that my wife and daughter were at, and we had some ice water as a demo. And at the end, I was saying, oh, Dad, you go on, you do it. And I'd kind of been doing this for about 3 years, and I just assumed that all right then, I'll show you how it's done. And put my hand in this ice water. And I lasted about 18 seconds. The pain was incredible. It went right through my bones, right into my knuckles, and I find it excruciating. Some people can stick their hand in ice cold water all day. There are individual differences, which is why when we do stuff with psychology, we use groups of people so you can sort of see a trend across people rather than just individuals. So basically, people had their hands in ice cold water, and they either repeated a swear word, which they nominated themselves, which is like me on the shed roof, just repeating a swear word, fuck, 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 fuck. They weren't allowed to shout it, they had to say it in a steady, constant rate. And the control condition was the same people with their hand in ice cold water repeating a neutral word. And what my students came up with was think of a word to describe a table, and whatever word they came up with. Often flat is a word that people use to describe a table, or wooden is another one. So they just basically, very simply, put their hand in ice cold water, repeat a swear word in one condition, then they do it again with a neutral word. We also measured self-rated pain during the experience, and we also measured heart rate. What we found was, now doesn't happen for everybody, but about 75% or so of people last longer when they're swearing than when they're not swearing. If you look on average over a group, it's always on average longer in the swearing condition than the non-swearing condition. We've done this a dozen or more times, it always works. It's a very reliable finding. You might dispute our interpretation of the finding, but the finding is indisputable. Swearing helps you cope with pain. Okay. So they keep their hands in ice cold water longer, they rate it as less painful, and their heart rate goes up when they swear. So heart rate goes up anyway when you put your hand in ice cold water, but it goes up more when you swear than when you don't swear. So what do we think this all means? Well, the disinhibition hypothesis, like people swear just because the stress kind of makes them just lose it for a short while, that shouldn't have any pain relief properties, because that's kind of just a separate process to the pain. And yet the pain went down, so we can get rid of disinhibition. The catastrophizing hypothesis was that the pain would get worse during swearing, because swearing is a form of catastrophizing behaviour. Well, it didn't, it got better, so we can get catastrophizing out of the way. The competency and the catharsis hypotheses, they both kind of are like this idea that swearing vents and swearing reduces stress. And well, they're not right either, because we saw heart rate increase, and an increase in heart rate is more to do with a ramping up of stress rather than a downgrading of stress. So what we're left with is none of those hypotheses, and something different again. So what our interpretation is that you've heard of the fight or flight response, which is where your body mobilizes to deal with a threat. Your heart pumps faster, you get adrenaline, various other things happen. It's the classic kind of stress response. It also has a pain-relieving effect known as stress-induced analgesia. And that's what our interpretation is of what we're seeing. It's stress-induced analgesia brought on by an emotional stimulus, that being swearing. So you swear, you get emotional, the emotion fires up the fight or flight response, and that's where the pain mechanism comes from. We did a follow-up study where we just got people to stress without the swearing, and we got them to be stressed by getting them to play a shoot-'em-up game in our lab. So they spend 10 minutes killing things on screen. That makes them feel aggressive, reliably makes them feel, so they have an emotional response. That emotional response raises their heart rate, and then when they did the ice water challenge under those conditions, we've got the same pattern of results as the swearing, longer in the water, rated as less painful, increased heart rate. So we think it's like this emotion-related raising of the fight or flight response. The other study in this 3 studies we got published was, okay, so now what I should say is, so we did the study, got an amazing media response. The media was all over it. They were really interested in it, which was a great experience for me to. This is where my interest of science communication comes from, having seen it in action. One of the consequences was that it got nominated for these things called the Ig Nobel prizes. The Ig Nobel prizes recognise research that first makes you laugh and then makes you think. It's a great thing to be involved in. You get lots of exposure and lots of people interested in the research. Along with us, on the year I won it, 2009, there was a team of vets, Spanish-English team of vets, and they won the medicine prize. We won the peace prize. You can see the sort of irony. Swearing is what people normally do just before they fight, and we got the peace prize. But there is a flip side to that, because it's been said that someone said, he who was able to curse his fellow man rather than smash their head open with a rock laid the foundation of civilization. So maybe swearing is a good thing, even in fighting, I don't know. But these vets got the medicine prize for collecting whale snot with a helicopter. Remote control helicopter. Which sounds crazy, except for up until then, they only knew what whale they blow out of their blowholes. They only had samples from washed up on the beach whales that were ill. So they wanted to get some healthy whale snot, to understand it better. How can you collect whale snot from free-roaming whales swimming in the ocean? Simple. You hire a radio-controlled helicopter pilot, and you sail up to it in your boat, and then you fly your helicopter over the blow and collect it. So I think that really nicely captures the Igs. It's a bit balmy and a bit daft sounding, but actually underneath it all there is something to it. Another quick example from that, it was some psychologists from Holland won the medicine prize, and they won it for demonstrating you can cure the symptoms of asthma with a roller coaster ride. That sounds daft, but the reasoning behind it was asthma has a known stress component. If you stress out an asthma sufferer, they will perceive their breathing to have become more laboured, even if it isn't. So it was a kind of neat scientific test of the stress asthma hypothesis, because there's 2 kinds of stress. Did you know there were 2 kinds of stress? There's the bad stress, which everyone knows about, but there's the good stress, which everybody loves, called eustress. You put someone on a roller coaster, it's a stress, it stresses the person, but in a good way. So if you put people on a roller coaster, they should get good stress, and so their asthma symptoms should relieve, and that's basically what they showed. So again, it sounds balmy, but there's some interesting ideas behind it. So anyway, so we got all the publicity, the Ig Nobels came calling, and it was a really great experience to, all of my experiences of the media were very positive. It all got, the research got very well represented, and it was all a very good thing. What nearly every journalist I spoke to asked the same question: does it matter how much you swear in everyday life, whether you get benefit from swearing in the experiment? I thought, don't know. We could research that. So the final study I'm going to quickly tell you about was we repeated the first study, but we had the additional question of asking people how much they swear in everyday life. So again, I think a little experiment might be in order. So put your hand up if you never swear. Okay, a gentleman's got his hand up. Mike, can I ask your name? Mike. Okay, Mike. So you never ever swear? Okay. Sorry? Did you really? Okay, so you have very strong views about swearing. But
Not really, I just don't do it.
you just don't do it. Okay. I mean, swearing is a very personal thing, and there'll always be a huge range of people that swear. So am I right? Mike is the only person that doesn't swear.
Very, very rarely. I just heard a friend say a word over the phone when the connection with Bangkok from her end was gone, but I could still hear her, and she said, "Oh shit!" And I thought, "Oh, that sounds rather nice."
Okay. You thought it sounded nice?
Yeah.
So you heard your friends say shit
Over
on the phone, but you don't swear very much.
Just a few years ago.
Okay. Yes.
So I now occasionally use that word, but just because it reminds you.
Oh, so that was like an introduction to swearing.
But I can't think of any other ones to use.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only one.
That's really fascinating. So you make...
It was expressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
emotional. So, okay. So you swear very occasionally. What's your name?
Kathy.
Kathy. Okay. So everyone else swears, don't they?
Yeah, but
Go on.
what Mike's response is not addressing is your point, that it's not conscious. If he hit his hand with a hammer, what would you do?
Should we try it?
What would Mike do?
He said, what will you do if you hit your hand with a hammer? Would you mind giving us a demonstration?
I'll just say down.
Say it down.
Is that swearing?
Well, that's it. That's interesting. We've recently hit the problem of what is swearing or what isn't swearing, actually.
Since I got the mic, can I just ask you?
Yeah.
You've left out the most important one, it seems to me, explanation, and that is merely the brain. You distract the brain, either consciously or subconsciously, which is why your pain went away when you hit it with a hammer.
Okay, but if you're only...
It just distracts the brain.
It is well known that distraction is a technique for relieving pain. But
If a kid falls over on the floor, the best thing you can do for him is to distract him. And
absolutely. But that wouldn't account for the heart rate going up.
Well, so what?
Well, that's important.
Why?
Because it demonstrates a stress response.
Well, maybe it intensifies the stress so that it goes away quicker.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that the swearing intensifies the stress, and that's what makes the...
It's possible.
It could be partly distraction. It could be a mixture of distraction and stress response. I definitely concede that. Yeah. Okay. So, so everyone else, apart from Mike and Kathy, has to put their hands up now. You don't mind. You can put it down in a minute, but you have to put it up now. Thank you. Put it up. Hands up, everybody. I want to see those hands right up in the air. Thank you very much. Yes, and behind the bar there too. Lovely. Right, okay. Okay, so just think how often you swear. Maybe on a daily basis. How many swear words do you say a day? And you can put your hand down if you swear fewer than 10 times a day.
Psychologist.
I'm trained to be honest and objective.
So, I often give this talk to school kids. Well, I know. It's a difficult thing to measure, but presumably people that swear a lot will give a higher number than people that swear less, and you can roughly get some idea. Put your hand.
This all implies that one is like guilt or something or rest. I mean, you swear because it's fun, and it can be part of your vocabulary. You may control it in public for politeness and rest of it. But to yourself or to your intimate, to your wife and the rest of it, I mean, who gives a fucking damn?
You swear in different ways in different groups of people for different reasons. I agree, but on average. So we've got our hands up. We've still got our hands up. If you swear less than 20 times a day you can put your hand down. And I used to be in that category, but I've got kids now and I've completely changed my vocabulary as a result. So we've got 2 hands there and a half a hand here and a hand there. Physicists. And a hand over there as well. 20-ish. Okay, would you go as high as 30? Yeah? Higher. Go on then. I think, are you the winners then? Or any advance on 30? Any advance on 30? Okay, 2 ladies over here. Go on, put a number on it. So you just managed to say those sentences there without swearing, so that was good. How put a number on it. How many times you swear a day? I know it's a difficult thing to do, but that's what we asked our participants to do in the study.
I would say well over 100.
Fantastic. And how about your friends? Are you friends? The same. So about the same because you're friends. And what are your names? Kelly.
Karen.
Kelly and Karen. Something to do with the name.
We work for the NHS, so...
Well. Fantastic. How many of your swear words happen during the working portion of the day?
Well, my patients are mostly sedated, so quite a lot.
Cool. Right. Okay. So we asked our participants to give an estimate of how much they swear a day, and you know, it's not going to be 100% accurate, or maybe even 6% accurate. But people can give a number, and it's probably right. You probably swear, you guys, a lot more, Mike and Kathy. So Kelly and Karen probably swear a bit more than Mike and Kathy. Probably. I mean, it's a not a brilliant measure. But you know, sometimes when you're doing science, you just have to do it any way you can. There are better ways of doing it that we've since come across. You can give people, you can get apps on your mobile phone that click on every 18 seconds, every 5 minutes, and just sample what you're saying. So there are better ways. There are more, and then you can very laboriously go through all those samples, count the number of swear words, and then kind of extrapolate from that what they probably swear each day. But we just asked people, and they gave us an answer, and we just went with that. We'll see how it goes. So we repeated the experiment. What do you think we found? How do you think the Mike and Kathys of this world got on in the experiment compared with the Kelly and Karens of this world? Pardon?
They came up.
They came up. There was basically a relationship between how much you swear in everyday life and how much benefit you get in the experiment, such that the people that swear the least in everyday life got the most benefit in the experiment. They were the ones that got the most benefit in the ice cold water challenge. And that kind of fits with ideas about habituation. So psychologists talk about habituation, which is the idea that the world is a complex place. We can't literally pay attention to every single stimulus that we're seeing all the time because there's too many and we wouldn't be able to function. So stuff that's been around for a while, a good example of this is you're all sitting on chairs, and you all think about your bottoms now on the chair. You can all think about the contact you're making with the chair, but you weren't thinking about that a minute ago. You were thinking about probably all kinds of things. Maybe some of you are thinking about the swearing talk. So the idea is that you get used to stuff. And so the more you swear, Karen and Kelly, the more it stops being this special form of emotional language, and it just becomes just another word, probably. Whereas if you don't swear very often, then when you do swear, it registers and it has a bit more of an impact. That seems like the most logical interpretation to me. So I think I need to probably start to wrap up, probably have my half an hour. So they're the 3 studies that we've had published. We're still interested more broadly now in we kind of feel like we've done swearing and pain, moving into other reasons of why we swear. And maybe I'll get to say a bit more of that in the discussions. But what I want to finish on is, you know, it does seem like a frivolous topic to swear, the psychology of swearing, and in many ways it is. It's a fun topic. The students love it. It's a great vehicle for getting up to non-scientists and talking about science to them. It's a great vehicle for getting students enthusiastic about doing student projects and thinking about what it is psychologists do. But there is a serious side to it as well. I found a website, what was it called? I can't remember. I think it's called planecrash.com, and it has the recordings of the last things people said on these in-flight recorders just before planes crashed. And as I suspected, and as was confirmed, one of, in these emotionally highly charged situations, life and death situations, you're going to crash. Oh, shit. Of course, that's what you say. Oh, fuck. I'm going to crash, I'm going to die. So, leave you with the idea that swearing is the language of life, from little children being born into the world to people dying grisly, horrible deaths. Swearing seems to be very closely connected with, what the essence almost of what it is to be a human, and when we have these hugely emotional situations. And I'll end there. Thank you very much for listening.
Cafe Culture North East is supported by Newcastle University, Peels and the British Science Association. We're also supported by Ginger's Cafe in Dance City, who host the events.